Five, four, three, two, one. Week 4, episode 4. How's it going, Jace?
Oh, Henry, it's going all right. How's it going for you, Buckaroo?
Pretty good. I think we should have a good episode this week. There's quite a bit of stuff that's been going on.
Oh, yeah.
First,
Kamala.
Biggest news of the week, Kamala Harris for Joe Biden as VP.
So what do you think?
I don't like her. When she was running for president, I didn't like her. I don't like her now. I thought her kind of not political career, but like her chances at anything this year would be sunk when Tulsi Gabbard just lit her up on the debate stage.
Dude, Tulsi ripped her a new one. That was bad.
I'm kind of shocked that there was even after that, because that sunk her presidency. I think after that, she didn't really have a chance at it. But I thought that would sink her VP chances. And it came out that, didn't she not prosecute Derek Chauvin, like the George Floyd guy? I think I remember that.
I don't remember hearing anything about that, but I know that I do remember one of the things that happened was she was like, I think she was a attorney general. What's it called?
District attorney.
The district attorney
DA.
for like California or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she like threw a bunch of people in jail for weed. She like was trying to penalize parents for not sending their children to school, like
sending them to jail for truancy.
Yeah.
The kids sloughing. That's a Utah word, sloughing. Not going to class. Word. That's funny. Yeah, and the fact that she stood on that debate stage with the other Democratic candidates and was talking about how she was committed to criminal justice reform and all that stuff, and there were people still in jail for possession of marijuana that she had put in jail. That came across as super disingenuous to me.
Yeah, she's just super disingenuous. She's like she's like a senator. When you say establishment Democrat, you're like, I think Kamala Harris falls in that boat. I think Joe Biden would have done much better to choose someone like Elizabeth Warren or even Bernie Sanders, even though I don't think Bernie Sanders would have taken the job.
I don't think so either.
Even Stacey Abrams, who I don't believe could run the country, but she's going to appeal to at least people that aren't happy with the establishment. Like, yeah. He should have chosen someone anti-establishment, but he chose Kamala Harris, who, I mean, some of her positions on things is like pretty insane. For example, she was giving an interview a year or two ago where she was asked if 16-year-olds should be able to vote, and she's like, we should definitely have that conversation. I certainly want to look into that.
Yeah, that's
Do you know what I was doing when I was 16,
yeah,
Henry?
16 was not, I wouldn't feel qualified to decide. Well, I mean, obviously I don't feel qualified to decide that, but I don't know, 16-year-olds I don't think have the political knowledge to be voting, even though I think they can be informed and intelligent. I think holding it off until 18 is a good idea.
Yeah, or get this. So she was on a committee hearing where the Senate was interviewing the head of ICE. I believe the former head of ICE. But she said, are you aware of the perception of ICE being similar to the KKK? Or like something along those lines. That's not an exact quote, but it's almost an exact quote.
Yeah. And
the guy was like, are you comparing us to freaking the KKK?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, seriously, like, what a ridiculous thing to say.
Well, yeah.
That's just like a political, like, little side jab. Like,
yeah, it's just a stunt because people will, in the moment, be like, yeah, they're both things are bad. Like, that comparison works. And then, but doing that, I think, for one, I mean, it lessens the severity. Like, comparing something to the KKK should be like the harshest judgment you can impart on something, and so to do it falsely like that just lessens the impact of that comparison in the future.
I agree. I think it's really weird, but I think I don't know if she's going to help Joe Biden's chances at getting elected, because I don't think she's wildly popular, as much as the media has already started like...
Yeah, they've started... It's weird. They've started like... I've seen a bunch of stories about how the progressives and centrists are all flocking.
Yeah, she's like a celebrity to the Democrats.
Yeah, like, I don't believe that. I think nobody. It's weird because it seemed like she was too, in the Democratic primaries at least, she was too radical for centrists and too like centrist for like real progressives, and she tried to toe that line, and I don't think it worked, and I think that sunk her campaign. But now there's this idea that you need to that everyone is coming together right now to rally behind her. Like, things have changed drastically since the Democratic primaries, when people kind of overwhelmingly said, yeah, we don't want her as president. And I think that's another thing that's kind of worrisome is I would say there's a significantly greater than zero chance that whoever Joe Biden picks as vice president,
they're going to be president one day.
President, if not, like, yeah, I think maybe during Joe Biden's first term. I mean, I've heard rumors that he's going to step down.
Really?
That he'll just retire once he gets elected to office. And then whoever his vice president is will be president if he gets elected.
Can you imagine?
I don't like that.
That would be a nightmare for the Democratic Party, though.
At least, I think they're orchestrating it. I think they'd much rather have Kamala Harris as president than Joe Biden. At least they could control her, and she's, as much as I don't like her policies, I think she's significantly more mentally capable than
she's
Joe
well put
Biden.
Together. She's very
definitely well put together. But I think, yeah, that's just crazy that you could run a campaign to try and get somebody elected president knowing that you're going to step down. And obviously that's just a rumor. I don't know if that's true, but I could see it happening. It doesn't seem too out there to me.
So let me talk to you about this. I'm not sure if you've heard this story, if you've read it. This is something that I saw on Fox News. So there was an internal, what's it called? Inspector General investigation into the origins of the Mueller investigation. I'm not sure if you heard this, but an ex-FBI lawyer just got charged. He's the first one to get charged, and he's pleading guilty to what was it? Giving a false statement to the FBI, or like a federal prosecutor or something, giving a false statement. So this is like the beginning of, like, in my opinion, a few people getting charged for the origins of the Mueller report.
Jeez,
dude, because get this. Okay, so I'm not saying the Mueller report is corrupt. I'm not saying the Mueller report was a bad thing. I think Donald Trump the Donald Trump campaign 1 billion% colluded with Russia in some way or another. I mean, meeting with a Russian lawyer in the Trump hotel, like,
yeah.
And that wasn't Trump, but it was Don Jr. But anyway, going back to what I said, I think this is like the beginnings of everyone learning how that started, because we've already known that, like, Comey said some crazy stuff, dude, and like first of all, James Comey is like a really weird character because he kind of screwed Hillary like 2 weeks before the election.
Yeah, by releasing the emails.
Yeah, and he kind of screwed Trump when he like started an investigation into a campaign, which was like one of the first times that's ever been done in American history.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like he's impartial, but only by being partial to both sides.
Right.
Like he's biased
That's
against
weird.
Both sides, and so it kind of cancels out.
Yeah.
But he sunk Hillary's campaign. I mean, for a long time it looked like the Mueller report was going to sink Trump's re-election and sink his presidency. I mean, he got impeached because of it. So I don't know. James Comey is kind of a weird player.
Yeah, I agree. And so FBI lawyer gets charged. The Democrats say this is like a political... You want to know what they said? They said this is a political investigation backed by, like, things that have already been resolved. Like, the Democrats are trying to pull what the Republicans did and just say this is a political investigation.
Yeah.
It's like, dude... People are getting charged, and I don't think he's the first one, because what the FBI did...
Well, he is the first one. I don't think he'll be the last one.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's spying? That was like a big deal. The word spying.
I don't think it's spying necessarily. I think there's definitely, I could see like entrapment type charges coming for, I mean, even there's records of Obama and Biden talking to FBI agents and the FBI director about, or I don't know if the director of the FBI, but at least FBI agents about how they could go about prosecuting Michael Flynn and what they could do if he didn't talk, how they could convince him that he has to talk. And that seems, I don't know, that seems a little bit corrupt to me, that an outgoing administration would actively try and undermine an incoming administration. And I think that's what we saw with that. And yeah, I don't think that is going to be the last of the indictments.
Right. So here's what I think about like investigating the Trump campaign. So I think they were deserving of an investigation. I think there was some really sketchy stuff that went on with all of that. But what I don't think is right is to investigate them literally during a campaign. And like I find that dangerous, because if the DOJ is just going to start investigating political opponents, it's like, at what point does it stop? Like, exactly. the incumbent is always going to have investigation powers? Mm-hmm. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's bad. And I don't like the idea, if independently of the Obama administration there was an investigation. I don't know how you can do that independently since they're in charge of the DOJ. But I could see it makes more sense to me. But the Obama administration was actively involved in that. And that there's been denial. I mean, Joe Biden and Obama have denied being involved in anything related to that. That seems, I mean, if it wasn't a problem, they wouldn't have denied being involved. They would have just said, yeah, we looked into it because that's our job. Like, we're in charge of that, which I don't agree with, but you just say that. So the fact that, I mean, Joe Biden came out and said he had no knowledge of the investigation into Michael Flynn when he was the one that brought up the idea of investigating him with the Logan Act. That's just a blatant lie. So I think that's an example of corruption.
Joe Biden's son, Ukraine, Energy Board.
Yeah, that's really bad. I don't know, or actually it's not really, I don't know how bad it is. It looks really bad. And I think the Trump campaign's realized that and has pounced on it. But I think that's all over. Like,
yeah, I think so too.
Every politician is getting kickbacks from companies for,
100%.
Which is horrible.
And like, I think that Trump has room to talk because he self-funded his campaign. He didn't have like big donors.
Yeah.
But like some of these other political people on the right that are saying like, blah, 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 this is corrupt, this is illegal, you got him that job. It's like, you guys are just as corrupt. Mm-hmm. Like, you guys are definitely just as bad.
Yeah. And I mean, it's my go-to example of this is Hillary Clinton giving a speech at Goldman Sachs for $1 million.
Not real.
There's no one's time speaking is worth $1 million, especially a politician. There's no other explanation other than just a bribe for, you're going to look out for us once you're in office. And it kind of backfired because she didn't get in office. So they wasted $1 million. But they all do that. They all do stuff like that. And once you're not a president anymore, or once you're not a senator, you get on boards of companies and you use your connections in politics to help those companies. And it's just, that whole thing is corrupt.
It's just weird. And there's been like people that have tried to bring legislation forward, like you can't serve on a board 2 years or 3 years after being a senator and stuff like that. And none of them ever pass. Well, it's like,
because why would senators pass a law that would
but it just seems like
run.
And this is what I'm talking about when like I say the media is corrupt, because like there's no reporting on those bills dying. Like I've heard about those bills getting introduced, and like there's no reporting on like corruption or the political donations of certain candidates. It's because like the establishment is all like one cohesive unit, and if one part falls apart, the other part is gonna fall apart.
Yeah, they're all so everything's connected, everything's corrupt, so you can't take down one portion of the corrupt organization without taking down the rest of it, and so it doesn't benefit anybody to work besides the American people who don't have the means or the motivation really to go after that.
Dude, can you believe that if Joe Biden wins, the face of the Democratic Party will be Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden?
People
can you
that
believe
have been
that?
in office for a combined, I mean, altogether it's over a century, right? Right? I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's got to be somewhere around there.
It's scary, dude. That's the face of the Democratic Party. That's the face of what is becoming an otherwise very progressive party. Is Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, who introduced the
crime bill.
The crime bill. He advocated for us going into Iraq.
He supported like segregated busing or whatever that's called, whatever Kamala called him out for in the debate.
That's another thing that shocks me about the Kamala Harris nomination.
She burned him.
She went after him about everything. The sexual assault allegations, the Tara Reid. She said, I believe all those allegations, the allegations of inappropriate like interactions with Joe Biden. She said, I believe all of that. I think all of that happened. And then as soon as he offers her the VP spot, she turns around and says, I don't know. Those don't seem credible to me. Shocking.
Did you see the video they made? Did you see the video they made with like Kamala Harris accepting Joe Biden's
I didn't see it. I just saw the tweets.
Oh, shoot. You've got to watch that video. So he calls her and he's like, Kamala, you got a minute? And she's like, yeah, Joe, sorry to keep you waiting. And like the most put together sketch you've ever seen. And it's like supposed to be real. And he goes, you ready to go to work? And she goes, I am so ready to go to work, Joe.
It's like if they did an SNL skit of that.
It really was. I've never seen something more put together. Like he was 100% looking at a script that whole time.
Oh, that's so funny. Would have messed up the words if he hadn't been looking at a script. Yeah. That hypocrisy, and it happens. I mean, it happens all over. Like that's what having the primary election within a party and then a general election does, is you get the candidates attacking each other within the party for all these different faults, and then it all gets dropped. No one talks about it afterwards, and it's shocking that they can go from, 3 months ago, just blasting Biden about things to now, okay, I don't remember that anymore. That doesn't matter. That's not a big deal.
Yeah. It's just funny that, because if you were to think of Joe Biden in his prime and like Kamala Harris right now in her prime, they probably have very similar policy positions. Like Kamala Harris is way more progressive, quote unquote, like on certain issues. But I think a lot of that is all talk. Even though I will say she does vote with Bernie on like 70 or 80% of issues.
70% of her Senate votes. But I don't know how difficult, as partisan as things have become, I don't know how difficult Senate votes have been to vote against people in your own party. I don't know, and that might just be a lack of knowledge about that process, but I feel like I would like to see how often votes were down party lines. And so those don't really count.
Right.
But no, I agree. It is, her voting has been more consistent with Bernie's. I think what's crazy to me about that, Joe Biden picking her as his running mate, is we've just had 3 months of protests about police brutality, and then the Democratic Party goes and picks a cop to be.
Yep. And Joe Biden. Joe Biden is literally the one that made the worst crime bill in American history. Really, pretty close. I mean, obviously there's stuff in like the 1850s and like 1960s.
Yeah, but in modern American history.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
This is what I'm talking about. The Democratic Party is out of touch. They're out of touch, and they will not get back in touch for years. I bet you next election, there's no way that they choose a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren. I don't think they will.
I think a lot of that depends on how November goes. I think if Trump wins, I've heard talks that the super far left, like progressive wing of the Democratic Party, wants Trump to win because they think that it'll push everyone just way further left, and so that would benefit them. So I don't know. Maybe if Trump wins, that serves that purpose and pushes everyone further left, and you get a Bernie Sanders, an AOC type person running for president and maybe winning. But I'm kind of with you. I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, it should have happened this election. I still hold that Bernie Sanders would have had a better chance against Trump than Biden, especially now with like what everyone has seen with Biden. And he's incapable of forming complete thoughts most of the time. He doesn't know where he is. Like these are,
he doesn't
these
go
are
out
all
in
real
public.
concerns. Yeah, these are all like real concerns. And dude, those debates are going to be something else.
Well, I heard, the first debate is scheduled to take place after 16 states have already voted. 16 states will have already voted before we see a debate between Trump and Biden, because since everything's going to be mail-in, all those votes will already be in, or most of the votes will already be in before the debate even happens. And I think that works to Biden's advantage, and that's why Trump's campaign has been pushing for more debates.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's really telling when your presidential candidate won't debate the other presidential candidate, and would much rather, I think they'd much rather not do any debates.
Right.
Except for Kamala Harris and Pence. They'd be more than happy,
dude,
to have those vice presidential
they're debating
debates
in Salt Lake.
Yeah, it's too bad. I would go if they were going to have crowds, but
there's no crowds.
I'm sure with coronavirus there won't be any crowds.
Even in Utah, you think?
I don't think so, because I think it's more of a national scale. I don't think that would look good for anyone to have crowds. But yeah, I would go if there wasn't going to be crowds. That would be interesting to see, because I think as much as I don't like Kamala Harris, she would probably wipe the floor with Mike Pence.
Mike Pence is not a good debater.
He was an appeal to kind of just regular conservatives that didn't get on the Trump bandwagon, I think, is why he was on the ticket. But he doesn't have any skills as a debater.
And he's just not he's just not a character. Like he's just not. He's like when you think he's just not a. When you think of Mike Pence, you don't think of that guy is really something. You just think Mike Pence, senator. And
it's funny because in an age where, cults of personality and kind of big characters are dominating, it's funny that Mike Pence is just this kind of random dude that, not many people care much about. And so, yeah, that's kind of funny.
What do you think about Apple, Fortnite, all of that technological warfare between? Yeah. For those who don't know, Apple and the Google Play Store removed Fortnite from their app stores because Fortnite was trying to circumvent the purchasing process for V-Bucks.
Yeah, that's the in-game currency.
Yeah, and you
Fortnite.
could choose to buy them from just the actual Epic. You could select a button and it's buy from Epic, or you could select a button and it's buy from the App Store.
And the reason they did that is because Apple takes a 30% cut of any transactions that happen on their platform. So buying an app or in-app purchases. And so Epic Games was trying to circumvent that.
So whose side are you on? Who are you fighting for in the war?
The Fortnite versus Apple war.
Yeah.
I'll admit, when I first saw it, Fortnite put out a clip that was kind of aping the Apple 1984 commercial.
What is 1984? I don't know about that.
The book, George Orwell, 1984.
Oh,
but
okay.
In 1984, Apple put out this like kind of classic commercial that was talking. It was when they released the original or the Macintosh, and it was kind of, they wanted to, I think the intent was to say like, we're something different, we're not conforming, we're special. And so what Fortnite did is basically copied that commercial, just line for line, like shot for shot, with just Fortnite characters in it. And I'll admit, I saw that video at first and I was like, wow, Fortnite kind of has a point. Like, that was a good marketing ploy.
That's cool.
Like, it was pretty cool. But the more I kind of looked into it and thought about it, the more it seemed like Epic Games just grabbing for more money. And they didn't, because I'm really sympathetic to antitrust, especially in big tech. And that's the angle that Fortnite was taking. And they've brought a lawsuit against Apple because of it. And I'm really sympathetic to that argument. But the way Epic Games was using it, I don't agree with as much the more I look into it.
So here's what I think. If there was more competition in that sector, I would say let Apple charge whatever they want. But Apple and Google Play Store have complete market control over apps for the most part, probably 99%, right? So I think that if Apple wants to charge 30%, and then, or Apple and Google Play want to charge 30% and essentially crush everyone else that tries to open a new app store or some alternative route for these games or these apps. It's like, you can't sit and crush people and then say we're the only two platforms and there will be no competition. If there was like 5 and Apple charged 30% and they didn't want to pay, so they took them off, that's a different story because Fortnite can just go to a different app store.
See, my argument with that, though, is Apple doesn't say you can't have apps on our service that don't pay us that 30%. It's if you use their payment system, that's when they charge the 30%. So we talked about this a little bit, not in the podcast, off the podcast. But Amazon uses a workaround for this. You don't buy anything on their Amazon Prime or Kindle, like Kindle apps on those products, on Apple products. You don't buy it directly from the app. You have to go onto your Amazon account online, buy it from there, and then it'll show up on your phone or whatever. So I think that's where I'm not as sympathetic, is because there's a workaround for Epic Games, but what they want to do is use Apple's payment service and also not pay the 30% fee that I think is a fee for using that service.
Right, but you're saying, so even if I wanted to buy V-Bucks and I click on buy from Epic Games, that still uses Apple's payment service?
Mm-hmm. It does. So what they could do is, if you went to epicgames.com, logged into your account, bought V-Bucks from their website, and they showed up on their account, Apple would have no problem with it. That's already what Amazon does on Kindle or Amazon Prime. It wouldn't be a problem. Where the problem is Apple has this dedicated payment system that's safe. They vet all the apps that are in the App Store, and so consumers know it's safe. They're not worried about downloading something and getting a virus or whatever. And so Fortnite is using that system but not paying the fee that Apple charges.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I don't know what to think about it, because I think Apple does have the right to choose to charge whatever they want. I still think 30% is steep. They make a profit on every transaction. Like, it's not just like covering the cost of putting something on the App Store. Like they have to make a hefty profit.
But they also have a platform that, as long as Apple approves the app, you could pay $0 to have your app on the App Store, right? If there's no transactions, or if your transactions happen off the app, like Amazon does with their apps, Apple's not getting any money from that. So I think I don't look at it so much as a kind of monopolistic, like we're going to say you have to pay us money. It's more, we have a service, we have a secure payment service, a secure app store that we know your customers' devices will be safe, will be protected. All the transactions will go through, be like safe. You don't have to set up your own payment system. But in return for doing all of that, we'll take a 30% cut of everything. And I think Epic Games is playing on the idea that people will automatically be like, oh, why would you charge them? Like, this isn't your game. People is kind of outraged about that. When in reality, when you look at it, it's more like Apple's paying a service or providing a service, and Epic Games pays for it by giving that 30% cut. And you can argue about the price, but it's a business model. Like, Apple sets the price.
Right. I just don't see competition. I don't see competition in the phone sector for a long time. I think Apple and Android will have complete market control for who knows how long.
Yeah, but I don't know. I agree with that. I don't think Epic Games should be the corporation challenging.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not.
Like,
yeah,
completely sold out to China, and so I don't think Epic Games should be the one challenging that. So that's another reason why I'm less sympathetic to their argument for, oh, like, we don't like this monopoly that you have on that, when I mean, they're not so much a monopoly, but they're a huge corporate interest that's bringing in billions of dollars a year. I don't really care about that you're going to try and circumvent Apple's payment system.
Right. Did you know that Disney owns 10% of Epic Games?
Yeah, that's why there's all the Star Wars, Avengers events. Yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, Disney's another one that is, as much as I like Disney products, I like the Marvel movies, I like Star Wars, whatever. Disney's another one that kind of has a monopoly on
100%
entertainment.
And just shows like those antitrust laws don't do anything. They literally bought Fox, which is like one of their biggest competitors.
Yeah, that's a weird one. And I think if they tried to go and buy anything else, the antitrust laws might step in. But it's crazy that they can, they own, I saw like flow chart the other day of all the properties and businesses that Disney owns. They own ESPN, they own Fox, Marvel, Star Wars, like Lucasfilms. They own everything. And
Pixar too, right?
Yeah, Pixar too. And yeah, that's a crazy monopoly. That's weird. There's so much. And with Fox, I saw something the other day that was talking about all the classic Disney films that are really just Fox films but it's just funny because it's not. I could see expanding in a direction consistent with kind of your studio's goals. Like if they bought an animation studio, like if Disney bought Leica that does the stop motion, they did like Kubo and the Two Strings. Maybe I could say, oh yeah, you're already in the animation business, you're doing that. But then buying Fox, that is their only connection is we both make movies. Like most of the movies Disney makes have nothing to do with Fox. Kind of the properties that Fox makes. And so, yeah, that's kind of crazy that Disney's allowed to just own all entertainment. Like 6 out of the 10 movies. Last year, the record for billion-dollar movies in a year was like 7. And last year, Disney alone had 8 or 9 or something like that. And yeah, it's just a crazy... And it happens all over. That's kind of the way that the entertainment industry is going, is consolidation into massive companies that own. There's no small... That's why like A24 films are so popular, is because it's a small studio. But yeah, the antitrust laws are sitting on a shelf in the Library of Congress collecting dust because they never get used.
That's so funny. I think that, like, especially with like Facebook buying Instagram is a good example, Disney buying Fox, like the antitrust laws just aren't being. Is that like a? I'm sure that's like a committee, right? Like an executive bureaucratic committee that decides whether those go through or not, right?
It might be. I think it's in the Senate. I think there's a Senate committee because I remember when they did investigate the Disney Fox deal. Like, they looked into it, and I remember hearing, because there was a while there that people thought it might not go through. People thought it might, and that happened when Sprint and T-Mobile like became one company. That got looked at too, and I think that it's hard to turn those companies down, because as big as they are, there's bigger companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. So they're like, or even, I mean, in the telecommunications for that Sprint T-Mobile deal, like AT&T, Verizon are just these huge companies. So how, even though you probably should not let some of those deals go through, they can point to the bigger fish and say, well, these guys are allowed to exist. You haven't broken them up. How can you stop our deal?
Right. It's like, I'm not sure if you know this, but I believe he was the richest man in the world at one point. In Mexico, they, like, when telecommunications were like coming out and like cell phones were becoming popular, like telecommunications were becoming popular, the Mexican government gave one man who owned a business, he had like a relationship with the government. They gave that one man the exclusive ability to sell all cell phones or like telecommunication services in Mexico at one point.
Yeah, that's one way to get rich quick.
Yeah, have you heard about that?
I think I remember hearing about the guy. I don't know the story very well.
Yeah, but that just makes me think like, geez, that's like, I hope one day that never happens, where there's like one company that literally has all the control. And if you were to ask me what company I think gets there first, it's Amazon.
Yeah, I think Amazon, the only thing that Amazon I don't think has, where I would push back on that idea, is that Amazon doesn't really make their own stuff. Like, they do a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like they were all like as focused on consumerism as people in capitalist societies are. There will always be a push for new and innovative products, and maybe eventually Amazon starts to do that. But right now, I don't see them transitioning into that. They've tried. I mean, they tried with the Kindle, and it didn't work. Like, it didn't work out. I mean, who has a Kindle? Everyone just has their smartphone. But it could, if they transition over and say, you know what, we're gonna make an Amazon phone, we're gonna make a Amazon computer. That could happen,
dude. And they have the tech too. Yeah, like 100%. They could pay any amount of money they want to develop that sort of tech and make it the most advanced phone in the world.
Yeah, I don't so much see one big company. I see like companies in different sectors, like big companies in different sectors emerging. So like in entertainment, like eventually Disney owns all media. And then, yeah, I mean, it's already kind of like that. There's like a few big companies.
Amazon owns shopping.
Like Apple owns technology. Disney owns media.
Oh, Disney, yeah. Disney owns media. Apple owns that.
Yeah, Tesla owns transportation.
Not quite.
Not yet.
But I think they will.
Well, if Elon Musk figures out Hyperloop.
Or a $30,000 car. Right now it's 40. If he can get that price point down to like 28,
I think everyone's buying Teslas.
100%, dude. And then if they start adding more places to charge your car, and the faster that the charging gets, where at one point it'll be almost as fast as filling up a tank. If they could ever get it that fast.
Oh, if they could do that, there's no reason to because it'd be vastly cheaper.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the Hyperloop thing is crazy. If
That's
you
like
can figure that out,
the tunnel or whatever.
Yeah, it's like the supersonic tunnel kind of, not train, but something like that. But it would revolutionize travel.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, because the one right now is that he's trying to do is LA to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And it would take like, I mean, less than an hour, I think.
That's crazy.
Which would be, I mean, it'd make travel there and so quick. I mean, people would commute.
Well,
people would live in Las Vegas
right.
and work in LA and have a 45-minute commute to their job in LA from Las Vegas.
Well, and they have like those high-speed motorways in like China. I don't know
Germany,
about Japan.
they have the Autobahn. Yeah, I think I'm surprised that the U.S. hasn't done. It doesn't make as much sense in the U.S., but in like Europe and China and Japan, they have the train systems.
Right.
They go everywhere.
And we do sort of like, we have the subway in New York. We have like.
Well, but they go like long range. Like I can take a train from France to England. Like it's.
Even though England's on an island, right?
Yeah, you go. It's under the English Channel.
Wait, actually?
Yeah, no, I'm dead serious.
Wait, so there's a tunnel that goes from France to England under the water.
No, I did that last summer.
Under the water?
Under the water, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Why have I never heard about this?
I don't know. That's on you, man.
How would it go under the water? There's like literally it goes down under the water?
Yeah.
That's not real.
You can pull up. You can even like pull your car onto a train that will take your car across the channel. But the only problem with that is those were, I mean, the towns and places, because the trains will even stop at like little tiny towns, especially in England. When I was there, we took trains around, and they'll stop in their train stops in these little tiny towns because they were designed with that in mind. Right now, the U.S. isn't designed with that in mind. Like the major cities can't have a big railway system that goes through. Like you couldn't have one going straight through the middle of New York. But I think that it's hard to retroactively do that. But if you could, I think that would revolutionize travel too.
That'd be cool, dude. There's been, or how about the idea that one day we'll have like rocket ships that can like fly you to the other side of the earth in like 2 hours. Have you heard about that? Like I'm sure you have. I know you have. It's like Elon Musk wants to have people travel by like rocket ship that can go back down to earth. Like you just literally take a rocket ship to like Europe to like Australia.
Oh dang, yeah.
You haven't heard about that?
I haven't heard about that.
This is like a big idea Elon Musk has, even though all of his ideas are big ideas. Like what's that one with like the thing in your brain? Neuralink.
That was crazy when he was on Rogan's podcast and they were talking about that, and Rogan was like, but this isn't like close, like we shouldn't be worried about it. And like, because the premise is that Elon Musk was talking about how long it would be until the need for verbal communication was gone.
Yeah.
Because they'd have like, you just have things in your head. And Joe Rogan was like, that's far away though. That's not too close, so we don't need to be worried about it. And he said, oh, Elon, like how long away, or how far away, how far off is that? And Elon says, yeah, it's not really close, probably 5 to 10 years. And Joe Rogan's like, oh my gosh, no way, that's not far away. That's not far away at all. But yeah, there's a bunch of crazy stuff that's coming up soon in the future. The coolest, I've seen ideas for space travel where you get it's basically a big slingshot. So you just you have to fly. It's like a satellite with these long tethers, and the spaceship just has to get up to the tether, and then the rotational energy will flip it up and send it on its way. And what's cool about those is you have a tether here, a small tether that just shoots you to the moon. And then on the moon, since there's not as much gravity, you can have a bigger tether, and then you can do that. And that's something that I've seen Elon Musk talk about too. So who knows? Maybe in 100 years we're traveling, like travel on Earth isn't even a problem. It's how do we travel through the solar system.
Do you believe in all that stuff Elon Musk says?
I don't know how much. I think he's optimistic for sure, but he's kind of delivered. I mean, I think if you said 15 years ago that we'd have those like Falcon X rockets, where, I mean, did you watch the launch a couple of months ago,
I did.
where the booster comes down and lands back on a ship? I mean, people would lose their minds. They'd say that's science fiction, like that's straight out of Star Wars, but that just happened 2 months ago. So I do think he's optimistic, but who knows? I would have said he was optimistic about that 10 years ago, and then we just saw it happen in real life.
Well, and just he made a good electric car, which like sort of didn't exist before Tesla.
Yeah,
a good electric car didn't
like
exist.
The Nissan
before.
Leaf or something.
Yeah,
but yeah, and I think.
And the Model S goes 0 to 60 in like 3 point something seconds.
Well, I think the Model S is down to 2.3 if you have the sport mode. 2 seconds. That's the acceleration of
and the Roadster is going to be
sub 2 seconds, 1.8 seconds to go 0 to 60 miles per hour.
Dude, that's literally,
you'll sneeze and press down on the gas and be going 60 miles an hour all of a sudden. It's crazy. He's done. And I think him breaking through in that sector has opened it up for other companies to say, oh, you know what? If there's a market for electric cars, people want electric cars. So now, even if the Tesla isn't the electric car of the future, maybe
Porsche. Have you seen Porsche's electric car?
Yeah.
Dude, that thing, like, they claim it's fast. It's going to be faster than the Roadster.
Well,
they claim it is.
Yeah, that's cool. But I just mean, I think if Chevy made an electric car that they sold for $20,000.
Yeah, or Ford made the electric Mustang.
Yeah.
Or was it the Mustang or the Charger? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Charger's Dodge. But
just it opens it up for other companies to start making electric cars.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And I think that's the greatest benefit that Tesla's had, much more than just like kind of making the actual electric cars. It's opening up the market for more electric cars.
Right. I think that's cool. I think Elon Musk is probably one of the, if not the smartest man on earth that I've seen. Definitely like smartest celebrity.
At least, public persona.
Yeah,
for sure. We were talking about earlier. You said there was some news about Macron in France.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so Macron, he's been like, so I believe it was like 3 or 4 months ago, he had said that he had made some comments about the United States and Trump, that saying like we're not going to be an ally. And lately he reiterated that, and he said, "Look, I'm going to prepare for the day that the United States, he said, the EU needs to prepare for the day that the United States is no longer going to be an ally." And I thought to myself, like, if you're preparing for the day that the United States is not going to be an ally, then you're preparing for a day that, like, the EU is going to stop being the United States ally. Does that make sense? So, like, why would you start preparing to not be an ally with, first of all, one of the most I shouldn't say one of the most democratic, but
I would say one of the most
I would too.
Democratic governments.
One of the most democratic governments, the biggest economy in the world, the strongest military in the world. Do you know what the United States military looks like compared to Europe?
Yeah,
why are you preparing? Why are you actively trying to stop being allies with the United States? And I don't mean to like showboat about the United States and like
I don't know if there's
get on
any
my knees.
Military that could challenge the
There's
United
not.
States.
There's
Maybe.
not. And we have been the strongest supporters of the EU since like day one. Name a country that has been more strongly a more strong supporter of the EU than the United States.
Yeah, it's surprising that you would come out and
and he called NATO. Get this, he called NATO brain dead. He was like, NATO is brain dead, which I think is 100 billion% true. But then he took a shot at the United States.
And United States is the only country remotely trying to keep NATO
a
semblance of a functional organization.
Dude, it doesn't make sense.
So I guess you say, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump comes out and says, okay, we're pulling all troops out of Europe. Like, deal with it, I guess, if NATO's brain dead and you're preparing to not have the United States as an ally.
Dude, and what about Justin and I don't mean to like sit and defend Trump, but what about Justin Trudeau he was talking to Boris Johnson and Emmanuel Macron, and he was like, yeah, Trump isn't here. It doesn't look like Trump's here yet, or President Trump is here yet. And Justin Trudeau goes, yeah, he's probably giving another one of those interviews. That's why he's always late. Like, just like a side jab. Do you remember that?
He got caught on like a hot mic. Just bashing Trump, which is not super becoming in public of like world leaders.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and people wonder like why Trump is so hostile to like all of these trade deals and like all of these things going on. It's like, I'm sorry, but he's the elected president of the United States. Like, I'm so glad he doesn't give a crap about what any of them say about him, because honestly, like, I've always held true that, like, if the United States is getting screwed, we shouldn't sit and baby other countries. Like for example, the EU put an import tax on Harley Davidson motorcycles, and then France put an import tax on all American technology companies.
Yeah.
And now that Trump is hitting back, they're like, oh, NATO is brain dead and we have to prepare for the day the U.S. is no longer an ally. It's like, no, you don't. You're preparing for the day that the United States takes back the fair trade that we've been known for before the last 30 years. It's like, these trade deals that Trump is making, and like these trade negotiations and renegotiating with the EU and renegotiating with China, people are like, he's starting trade wars, like this is not good for the economy. I'm like, in my opinion, he's the first president to take serious action against the United States citizens getting screwed for years upon years upon years. And guess what? I would rather cut off all trade relations with China than see China get a bigger and better economy than the United States.
Yeah, and I think there was probably an idea among the rest of the world that when Trump got elected, he'd be a pushover. He'd have he has no experience, so he'd just be easy to take advantage of. And I think when that didn't really happen and he was belligerent and kind of he went about and was like, oh, he's not going to take any crap from any of those other countries. I think people were like, oh, shoot, we got to start bashing him. And then they started bashing him, and there's definitely things to bash about Trump.
Yeah.
But it seems the stuff that he's getting bashed on by some of those other world leaders doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Right, and like if you're going to make those claims about the United States, you better make those claims about Britain too, because the British people wanted to leave the EU and they couldn't stand it. And when Boris Johnson ran for prime minister, or for re-election as prime minister, the what's it called, the Liberal Party in England. The Labour Party, yeah. The Labour Party got annihilated. It was like one of the like worst elections for them in decades. Like, this is what I think this is what people don't understand about the shift in economics and politics and social circumstance of today, is people are getting much more populist. Now, populist can mean like socialist populist. I think it's very similar. Socialism and populism are very similar in different ways. But like, people are going more to the right or more to the left, and they don't have time for like big organizations or big political collaborations between countries. Like, I just think people are more concerned about taking care of the problems at home than they are about taking care of the problems of like across the world.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like Britain left the EU, and I think that Boris Johnson won in a landslide because, like, look at all the political games they tried to play with Brexit. Like, it never got done. It didn't get done until Boris Johnson got reelected in a landslide. And I think a lot of those people were like, you know what? I didn't vote to leave the EU, but I'm going to vote to leave the EU just to show up the Labour Party.
Yeah, and I think that happens. What's crazy is the parliamentary system that Britain has is way more conducive to getting things done quickly than the United States. And they couldn't get that done. And so I think it probably is, even though it's not, it's a little bit comparing apples to oranges, but it kind of gives an indication that people are probably pretty fed up with the slow-moving political system in the U.S. And that I don't think that, like, Trump and Bernie Sanders are super different, but I think they're symptoms of the same core issues.
Yeah, their rhetoric appeals to the same people, in my opinion.
I think their rhetoric appeals to... I think they're both kind of populist. They both... both of their rhetoric was, we're going to fight for kind of just the average person. We're not going to stand for...
the establishment.
Yeah, like, we're going to fight against the establishment. So, in that way, I'd agree that they appeal to similar people. But we didn't get to see Bernie ever put any of that to work. And I don't think Trump has done an awful lot for just regular people. He's kind of...
What has he done? Like, I don't know what he's done.
He hasn't done much. Yeah, especially, like, on that front. I mean, he did a little bit with... I mean, the trade war with China has helped a little bit.
Well, as soon as they get a deal, it'll help. But right now, as far as I know, it hurts.
Yeah, but I think it does. I mean, the idea behind it is that
it'll bring him to the table.
It'll bring him to... Yeah,
and exactly. I support that. Like I said, like, I'm so glad that, like, Trump is putting up a big middle finger to China. Like,
yeah,
I'm glad.
Well, especially, I mean, there's so much... I mean, not even to mention the human rights violations that China
they're kidnapping people in the night and taking them to concentration camps.
Yeah, they have concentration camps, but even the, like, IP theft. I mean, that's how China gets half if not more of their, like, intellectual property. Is they bring an American company in and say, okay, you can sell in China this product for 5 to 10 years, but after that you have, like, no claim to it. And companies eat it up to be able to access the Chinese market. They do that, and that's one way they get, like, IP from other companies. And they also, I mean, they'll just blatantly steal. Like, when a company moves in, they'll send people to work at the company, and then they'll steal information and bring it back. And that's part of the reason that Trump is fighting against it, is that type of stuff. But the human rights violations, to me, I mean, that story's kind of gotten buried by
the Uyghur Muslim story?
Yeah, that has gotten buried under, I mean, everything that's going on in the U.S. right now. That's crazy. There's literal... They caught them selling the hair of Uyghur Muslims. Selling the hair. They kidnapped people, took them to concentration camps, cut off their hair, and sold it.
And this is where I, like, think that the UN is just, like, powerless, is, like, this shouldn't be happening in a country like China, right?
We know about it, and nothing's being done to fix it. I mean, there's some sanctions, but no country is doing anything or can doing anything, and they're denying it. China's denying that it's happening, and people are kind of like, okay, I mean, we know what's happening, but we can't really do much about it. I mean, every country in the UN... China should lose its spot on the Security Council until they fix that. I mean, every major country, like, every member, like, the EU should, like, I mean, embargo China. I mean, maybe not embargo, but just, I mean, sanction China. The US should sanction China harder until that stops.
It's because they've become, those other countries and the United States have become so dependent on China. And none of them want to, like, come to terms with the fact that China's going to probably be the biggest nation in the world, or not the biggest, but the biggest economy in the world within the next 20 years. and no one wants to take control of that. And if someone doesn't soon, that's going to be a big, big deal.
Well, it's scary to think that in not a super long time, we're gonna end up with like a Chinese government that has just complete control of the world economy. That's honestly super scary. Yeah, and I think it's an issue that we need to just deal with right away, and it's weird to me that no one's really taken responsibility for that.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think about like I'm not sure if you heard about, well, I am sure you heard about this because we just talked about it, but the peace deal between UAE and Israel, because I don't know a lot about it. I know that Israel was like planning to annex the UAE or something. Is like,
oh, I haven't heard about that. I knew that both countries are kind of they're both allied with the United States, but they weren't allied with each other. So even though, it's kind of a proxy, like the US kind of said, yeah, like you have to kind of agree with us, you have to whatever, like let's get this done. I think it's a big deal because part of it was that Muslims can come worship in holy sites in Israel. That Israel won't declare those sovereign and like block people out, which I think is big. And I think even though they're kind of proxies for the United States, that doing that is a step in a direction for a more stable relations in the Middle East between Israel and those countries.
Israel and Palestine. What are your thoughts?
That's really difficult. I think the best solution, and I don't know how you do it, is I subscribe a little bit to the two-state, like just having two separate states, but with super loose kind of travel between the two. Because there's holy religious sites all along that area, so it's difficult to give either population complete control. But I think both parties want their own state. It's a super difficult issue.
So here's what I think. I'll be coy. Here's what really pisses me off as a liberal is the Liberal Party, the Democratic Party is very quick to criticize the difference of opinion of people in the United States. For example, you're homophobic if you don't support gay marriage. I support gay marriage. If you say the wrong word, like not the wrong word, but if you use the wrong phrase, like you could be anti-Semitic or racist, like the bar is so low nowadays. Mm-hmm. But then they'll go out and they'll support like Palestine becoming, one state with just Palestine, and getting rid of Israel isn't a real state. Like the liberals will defend this, but it's like, you guys do realize that like homosexuals are literally stoned in Palestine.
Yeah, there's issues with...
I said Palestine. It's Palestine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking Pakistan.
But
like, come on, like there are human rights violations going on in the Middle East, and you guys are defending those as like just a different culture, which it is. But look, you can't defend human rights in the United States, and you can't defend human rights in the United States and not defend human rights overseas. Like the stuff that they do to homosexuals in Pakistan, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, UAE, like these are not acceptable for the 21st century, and this is stuff that needs to be stopped. Now, for example, in Saudi Arabia, women can now drive as of last year. Like, This stuff
what?
is
That's crazy.
Like Israel, this is why I've always been, I don't want to say pro-Israel because I just am not that informed on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't have a full understanding of the history and conflict between the region, but I've always been more on the side of Israel just because they have a democracy that is based, they don't have a lot of human rights violations. I mean, granted, their military like is defending the border with what's the country? It may just be like, I don't know, but
yeah,
I know their military
issues.
has
there's issues for sure.
Some issues, but as far as like homosexuality in the region, that's something that I think is very important. And I mean, it's completely legal in Israel and in Palestine. They like it's outlawed. Saudi Arabia, it's outlawed in all these countries.
Yeah,
China.
It's a super difficult question because I understand where people are coming from. It seems harsh to say, like they took that land away from Palestinians when they made Israel a state. But to me, it's a similar. I think you just have to. I think it's hard to do, but I think you have to drop the past a little bit. Like that's the only way to move forward is to drop what's happened and say, okay, we need to normalize relations between the two parties and try and figure out how to work out an agreement where we can have these two countries and people can coexist peacefully, and there's all these religious sites that are super important to both peoples, and you need to be able to find a way.
They've tried to, though. They've tried to, and the Palestinians won't come to the table.
So that's where I'm a little bit optimistic from this peace deal that we were originally talking about with the UAE and Israel, is even though it's a small step, I think it's still a step in the right direction, right? Because you're normalizing relations between a Muslim country and Israel, and by doing that, I think you open up the door to doing that in other places, to say, and now it's not this negotiation between Israel and this other country. You can bring the UAE in and say, hey, we did it, it works, like our people can go worship at these holy places, like wouldn't you like that too? And slowly, I mean, that's a huge deal, I think.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, I don't believe like if that is their culture, I am totally supportive of their culture. But that being said, I believe that there are some aspects of culture, even the culture in the United States, we should change. Like the culture, there are cultures around the world that like I think have ideas that are rooted in things that shouldn't still happen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe I can get your thoughts. Maybe I'm alone in this, but there should be UN resolution, there should be something, there should be some sort of like remedy for not remedy, but there should be some sort of like punishment for countries that openly like stone gays or like openly stone people who have sex before marriage, or a woman that doesn't wear a burqa when she leaves the home. I realize those are all aspects of culture, but I'm like very supportive of like free will and, you know, being able to do these things in these countries. Like I feel like that's almost not even a culture argument at that point.
Yeah, and it's difficult because I'm super. I mean, other cultures are like, I mean, amazing. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff on this wall is from other places, other cultures, and I think there are aspects about every culture that are beautiful and amazing to experience, and we can learn from. But when those cultures start infringing on kind of, I mean, other people's, not so much lives, but I mean, their basic human rights.
Yeah, and
I think that's where you have to step in and say, you know what, as we respect your beliefs, but these people, you shouldn't have a government that is going to, kill people for living their life.
And for example, like when I was religious, I openly criticized and still openly criticize the way that my former church treated homosexuality and like African Americans. Like I still do openly criticize those things. And I'll be completely fair about criticizing the United States. I'll be fair about criticizing the Middle East. I'll be fair about criticizing China, because there's always going to be things that need to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that in the Western world, there's not gays that get stoned to death.
Yeah, and I think.
But on that same note, there are African Americans in the United States that get killed for zero reason by cops.
Yeah, and there's problems, and I think where there's. Yeah, and that's where I like part from the culture argument and saying, oh, it's this culture, is I think culture is great to have, but when it's you get fundamentalists that we have this culture, we're not going to change, that's where you end up with major problems. You need to be able to change and adapt to. And obviously it's horrible that stuff happens, but you have to come from somewhere and work towards a better place. So I think it's a weird argument that people say, oh, it's just their culture, like you should respect all cultures, there's no bad culture, because to look at it with that kind of black and white, like good or evil, I don't think there's any culture that's inherently, at least when we're talking about like other countries, like I think there's definitely like cultures in the sense like office culture. There's bad stuff, like cultures there that are completely bad, but
what's office culture?
People will say an office has a culture of this, and that's a completely different thing. I shouldn't have even brought it up, but I just like other countries, cultures from other countries and peoples.
Yeah,
I don't think any are inherently good, like all good or all bad.
Right.
You have to take the good parts and learn from them, and like show those, and then take the bad parts and work to change that.
Right. Going back to the Palestine thing, I think if I believe it would be a good idea for Palestine to have a free state and to like a two-state system. That being said, I think there are a lot of things that both countries have to give up, and I don't know if either country is ready to give up those things.
But but you've got to get there. It's about, all that stuff is about
how? It's not going to be Trump that's going to do it. Yeah, and it's certainly not going to be Joe Biden that's going to do it.
I think that's why, I keep going back to this, but I think that what just happened with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, I think that's huge.
I think Trump did play a role in that.
I think he did play a role in that, and I think that's huge to normalize relations between Israel and a primarily Muslim country like that.
Yeah.
Even though it's, even though they're both already allied with the United States, and kind of that's a little bit different than, say, Syria or Palestine, that area. But I think it's a step in the right direction that can serve as a model for other countries and other people to start working that out. And maybe Palestine is the last puzzle piece to fit into that. But I think it's a lot easier to get the full picture and finish a puzzle when there's a bunch of other pieces in place than when there's no pieces. And I think that the peace deal between Israel and the UAE is that first puzzle piece that maybe you can start working off of and start building to that full picture.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I think that it'll take some time to figure out all of this stuff that's going on in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're going to go through a similar transformation as we went in the United States and the West, where they start to become a little bit more progressive. They start to become more accepting of different ideologies. Not that they're not accepting of different ideologies, even though there are some in those countries, but there's some in the United States too.
Yeah.
I think that, say, like 20, 25 years, 50 years even maybe, I think that you'll see those countries, because you've already seen them, like Saudi Arabia has seen a total economic transformation. UAE, total economic transformation. Yeah. Like, I think give it some time, and like I think a lot of the differences in war in the Middle East is going to be solved organically. That being said, the United States, Russia, China, all these countries can't continue to get involved
playing
in the Middle East.
Proxy wars in the Middle East and Africa has never benefited.
Dude, we killed the leader.
Proxies.
Right. We killed the leader of, I believe it was Libya, Muammar Gaddafi.
Work. Yeah, it just doesn't
They are
work.
selling slaves in the streets of the capital city.
Yeah, and it never... And
he was a terrible guy. He was a dictator. He was a murderer. But guess what? Those terrible guys usually maintain control of their country better than the freaking Hillary Clinton in the State Department does.
Yeah, and it doesn't... Yeah, the proxy wars never... I mean, we've seen that since, the Cold War. The proxy wars have never led to anything good. Korea, Vietnam, none of those... Vietnam's doing well now.
Are they still communist?
Because I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But it's because things didn't work out in the proxy war. Like, the proxy war didn't go how the one in Korea went, where the two countries held their lines, the communist and democracy countries held the line in the middle, and now we have North Korea and South Korea. And North Korea is a horrible place, and South Korea is doing well. But that came from... not from the war. That didn't come from the war.
Right. What do you think about, like, human rights violations taking place in a country super duper bad? Do you think it's the responsibility of the United States to get involved?
I think
we're talking really, really bad, like just straight up genocide.
I think that's what the UN is supposed to be for. And if you had a stronger UN that actually did something and wasn't in bed with places that are committing those human rights violations, because I think it's difficult to say just the United States should be responsible for it. I think the United States should play a part in it, but I think that's why you need an organization like the UN to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's become powerless, right? It would take another, I think that there's going to be another organization after the UN that'll have serious power. I think the UN at some point will be dissolved. In the United States, we'll have a major leader that wants to pull out of the UN, and it'll start a chain of countries dropping out. And I think there will be something new that gets started that has a lot more control and power. Not that I want that. I'm not a globalist, and I'm sure you would probably want that more than I. But I think that it's already been proven that the UN can't get anything done. That's been proven. The United States by alone, without any other country, can get more done than the United States, than the UN, in other countries. Think about that. The United States, a sovereign country, can get more done in other countries than the UN can.
I think the UN, the way you could fix that, and obviously we're just two teenagers in Utah spitballing about massive issues that people have been trying to solve for a long time, but I think one possible solution is to give the UN more power to punish, economically.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if they could do that, right now, the UN can pass a resolution that does absolutely nothing to a country, and it's on member countries to do stuff in their own country that to punish those, to carry out the UN resolution. If you gave the UN the ability to do that type of stuff and say, our members are going to refuse to trade with your country or are going to impose a 20% tariff on everything you do, how quickly would China stop having concentration camps, would you get changes? But until they do that, it's just a toothless organization that won't really get anything done.
I think that there should be and like you said, we're just spitballing, but I think there should be like a 3-strike rule where like if you engage in human rights violations 3 times, you should be kicked off the Security Council. Like that seems like a pretty interesting solution to me, because I tell you what, China and Russia should not be on the Security Council, and I know that that's coming from the perspective of a Western person from the United States, but they have engaged in human rights violations for years. There is no time in United States history, actually that's not true, the United States, not in recent times, but the United States has definitely committed human rights violations. When we put the Japanese in what were literally camps, they were borderline concentration camps though. Like that was like a dark time in US history. We genocided Native Americans, we put African Americans in slavery. We put Japanese in internment camps.
In the UN Security Council then we should be kicked out. Like, you shouldn't be in that, right? Yeah. And so when you see other countries doing stuff, I mean, on that level, close to that level, I mean, more than that level, they shouldn't. I mean, China, I mean, the first thing when the news about the camps for Uyghur Muslims came out, the UN should have said, sorry, like, you're off the council. You can't get away with this. Can you vote
someone off the council? Do you know how that works? I doubt it.
I don't know. Probably not, and it'd probably be super difficult, and politics would get in the way of that. But until you give the UN actual power to punish countries or even help countries. I mean, give them a carrot on a stick to actually like help countries, lead countries, or be able to punish them, because they don't have power to do either right now. You won't get any change that comes from the UN, even though I think that's an organization that could help a lot of people in the long run.
Yeah, I think. What would you think about like? Wait, does the UN have every country? Is North Korea still in the UN? I know they used to be.
I don't know if they have every country. I think they have most. I know they recognize. No.
I think the UN recognizes Palestine as a country.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how that works. And that, yeah, and you'd have to include, and that's another reason, going back to the Israel-Palestine thing, is why I think a 2-state solution would be good, is because then both those countries could kind of advocate, have a voice on the world stage for their people. And so, but yeah, right now you'd need participation from everybody. You'd need a lot of different things to fall into place before that would work. But I think that would be a solution that is way too complicated for us to discuss with our limited knowledge of how those things work, but we'll try. We're going for it.
Yeah.
And we probably couldn't outline every step of the way, but I think that's probably the end goal, to do those things.
All right.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Oh, that was fun, Henry. 4. I like this episode.
Yep, this has been good.
I broke this.